Every classroom has at least one. That student who never talks in the classroom, who you're never sure if they're understanding the material, if they're following along, if they're worried about anything, they're just silent. So in today's video, I have 3 tips for dealing with the situation. Hey there, it's Erica from Ever Educating, and I talk about teaching tips, tools, and resources for the college instructor. In today's video, I wanted to talk about 3 ways to help you better understand that student who never talks in class, right? Who's dead silent, doesn't email you either, doesn't come to your office hour. What do you do, right? When you're worried that those students are not understanding potentially, or not paying attention, or they're worried about something and you have no idea. How can you get some interaction from them? And so I have 3 ways of potentially doing this. And so the first one is to do what's called an exit card. And so these are actually very popular in the K through 12 space as well. But basically it's an in this card that you have every student have one, right? And then you could ask them ever many questions you want, but in my case I would ask 2. And so that I would ask every student to write their name on it and say, 1, write down the one thing that they feel that's most important that they learned in that particular class period, right? What's one thing that you think was the most important thing you learned in today's class, right? Or in this week of class. And then the second one would be, what's one question that you had that you feel was not answered in class? Or if you have no questions, you can't just say I had no questions. What's one thing that you feel could be gone over in more detail? That if I had to repeat something in class, what's that thing that you think would be most beneficial to go over again? And so again, you can do this in a class-to-class basis, though I wouldn't do it every class period. I guess you can, but it takes up time, right? Or you can do it at the end of a week and ask about the week as a whole. And so I do this periodically, and so even if my student never speaks in class, I at least know, okay, Jane, who I don't know what her voice sounds like, she thinks this is the most important thing in today's class or this week's class, and actually she had a question that she didn't ask, or she feels that this element could have been repeated again and she wouldn't, I guess, been bored out of her mind for having it repeated, right? So it's one way of getting these students to talk is by asking them to write something down and turning it in and having everybody do it so they don't feel singled out. Now the second tip is to do something digital, right? So if you have your LMS site, you can have a discussion forum that's online rather than verbally in class. So if you're not in a computer lab, this would be homework, right? But you could still have, all right, for homework, I want each of you to answer these questions that I have about today's discussion or today's reading, etc. Right? Or maybe about next week's reading or next class period's reading. And so in that way, again, they're required to answer the question, and they could have basically a digital discussion by giving you an answer online. And so again, you're hearing from them besides just when they turn in major projects. So here's Jane again, and she's answering these questions, and you realize actually she's really confused about what this term means. The next class period, you can go over that term again, right? And any others that are confused, that are confusing your students, right? And in that way, she might not talk in class, but you have an idea of what to go over again because of her response that was digital. So that's idea 2 for how to hear from these silent students. And the third one, it depends. You have to have the time, right, to do this in your class, and that's to do individual conferences. So actually cancel a class period or maybe even 2, and in replacement, you meet with every student for 15 or 30 minutes. So obviously, the silent student might be silent when it's one-on-one, but maybe not having the classmates around them will help them open up a bit more with you, right? And so for those who are anxious about meeting with you in person, you might have we're gonna go over these 3 things in this meeting so they can prep for it, right? And then bring any questions you have for me too. So in this way, I try to do this as much as I can. I don't succeed every semester, but having that individual conference, I'd say early on in the semester, latest I'd say by week 6, so that you can have an idea of, all right, at least I know that Jane is really, she's understanding everything that's going on in class. She's just not speaking in it, right? Or she's quiet because she's suffering from something that she hadn't been able to talk about with anybody, and now that we're one-on-one, she explains like, I'm going through XYZ. Then you can offer some advice, either going to the counseling center, right, or going to some kind of resource on campus, or maybe she just needed somebody to talk to, and like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know that you're going through this, right? We can have some wiggle room with extensions on deadline that you missed, or whatever the case may be. And so having that one-to-one can be beneficial for a lot of students, and for you to get to know your students more personally, right? Especially the ones who don't talk in class. And so maybe she won't talk again, right, in the classroom, but at least you have a sense of she's understanding what's going on at least, right? Or she's not. So I have to either, email her, right, for more one-to-one help, or I have to make sure that I'm being, I talk slower in class, or repeat things, or I have more activities for homework, whatever you want to be the solution to that, situation. But so these are the 3 ways that you can get the student who never speaks to speak to you in some way, in written form, in digital form, or in verbal one-to-one communication. And so if you found these tips helpful or you plan on using them, I would appreciate you clicking the like button below. And of course, subscribe if you want to make sure to have more teaching tips in the future.